I'm Trish.
And I'm Thaddeus, and you're listening to the Fallen Short podcast. This week on the podcast, we are talking about loneliness. And before we get into that, I know the past couple of weeks we've been talking a little bit of politics, and yes, we don't live under a rock. We know what's going on, what's been going on the past week. All I'm going to say with it, just to kind of put a little bit of a bow on it for now, unless we feel like we need to go back to it down the road. Yes, the media affiliates have projected Joe Biden to be the next president. Yes, Donald Trump is going to contest it. It is what it is, no matter where you believe. The important thing is that instead of stirring each other up and putting a negative spin on things and saying, oh, no, this is wrong, or this can't be, or trying to reverse things in your own way, or, social media is censoring me, I'm going to move this way or this way. Just stay strong in your faith, and the Lord's going to work it out. So that's all I'm going to say on that. Again, this week we are talking about loneliness. So
last night as I was sleeping, I had a dream. And in my dream, I was in a support group. And in the support group, we were going around and we were sharing kind of our struggles and what our thoughts were and our innermost secrets. And this was a dream, granted, but I tell you, I woke up from this dream like it was a nightmare. And I felt like I had shared part of myself. And then immediately I felt a rejection in my dream. And I woke up in like a panic, and it was just interesting to me how in my dream I felt rejection and I felt loneliness, and how I think that what is happening right now in our culture is it's dividing us, and the things that maybe we can have an opinion on are causing us to break apart from other people, causing relationships to fall apart, causing us to feel frustrated in our workplace, feel frustrated on social media, feel frustrated with our church, feel frustrated in general, and things that normally we would find community and we'd find bonding with other people. We are right now, because we're in so much turmoil and so much chaos in our culture, in our society, we're not having that comfort of being together with like a group of people that we have similar beliefs with. And I think it's interesting how sometimes we keep our opinions to ourselves for fear that people will reject us, but then in the long run, it just makes us feel more lonely.
And even just in the last week, there's plenty of things that I've seen on social media that make me not want to talk to certain individuals. Like if I saw them face to face and if they brought up the current event, I would just feel like, okay, I don't really want to talk about that because I already saw what you spewed out on social media, and I might have a very different view. And that's, I think, what you're saying. Like, I don't know that I want to spill everything that I believe out there on certain things, not just the presidential election, just because there is that fear of rejection of what others are going to think, and then me being left in the dark, left alone. Not that, I am a homebody. I do like to be alone, but in a different way of just like, wow, like nobody agrees with me.
Right. We don't even agree with each other all the time. And you're never going to find somebody who you fully agree with on everything. And if you think you have, somebody's faking, I guess. But I know for me, I a lot of times hold back my opinions or things like that on social media, especially, but even in conversations with people that I'm having, because I don't want to offend them, or I don't want them to think that my opinion is a reflection upon who they are, or the choices I make is a reflection on somebody else. I think that it's so easy to isolate myself and not open up about my values or my beliefs and my opinions about certain issues just because I know the person who I'm talking to has an opinion about something that maybe I don't agree with. And I'm afraid if I tell them what my thoughts are on, they'll reject me. But yet at the same time, I feel really lonely because in our relationship, it's one-sided where I'm hearing what they believe about something, but I feel like I can't share my perspective on it too. And I think that it's interesting how I allow myself to be in that place of loneliness because I'm afraid that if I really let people know what I think about something, that they'll reject me or that they will think I have issues because I have this perspective. So I think that loneliness is something I've struggled with my whole life. And as a child, I was the only girl in my family. I had 4 brothers, which was a blessing, and they're awesome guys. And I love my brothers so much, but I was still always the only girl, and I always felt super alone. And I felt like I'd never had that sister relationship that I always longed for. And I would hang out with my brothers, but it was still, I always felt this void, this longing for a sister. And I think even as an adult, I have had those times where I see sisters together and it's just this aching inside my heart for a sister. And I feel lonely sometimes for that. And I've had friends come and go in my life who've fulfilled that void and helped that longing to not be there so much. But regardless, there's always been a loneliness in my heart. And I want to talk about that loneliness but I do want to talk about how our culture, I've heard statistics that we are more connected than ever, but we are more lonely than ever. Because of social media, we are connected 24/7 to the world around us. I honestly feel bad for students nowadays because when I was in high school, granted, social media, I'm a millennial, so social media was on the brink, but the difference was we didn't have social media in our pocket. We had to go home and be on our computer to be on social media. I had a cell phone. It just wasn't smart. And I think that it's interesting how when I was in high school, I could leave high school, I could go home, and I could just be with my family. But students nowadays go to school and they never leave school, just like you go to work and you never really leave work because we're always connected. We are never really disconnected from our family because we're always on social media. We're never really disconnected from our church because it's always on social media. We're never disconnected from whatever because of social media. And we're so connected, but yet we're so lonely. I feel like for me, some really transitional times in my life where I felt super lonely. First of all, was after high school when I lost that connection of on a daily basis, I'm with my friends, and something that we had to do was actually something that brought us together in like a social structure to be with one another. And I remember feeling really lonely after graduation. And then another time I remember feeling super lonely is Thaddeus and I, we were the first of our friends to get married and felt super lonely around that time just because we were married and we had each other, which is really important that you have that, but it's also important that we have relationships outside of one another. And then I would say when I started motherhood, I felt lonely, and like just different journeys of my life where the feeling of loneliness maybe is always there, but it was intensified because first of all, I was in a new season of life, maybe without people with me, but also because there's an aching in my heart for something more. And obviously that's something more. What I'm trying to build up to is that loneliness and that aching in my heart was always for Jesus. And oftentimes I would look to the world to fulfill a longing inside of me, but it never could fulfill or satisfy me. It was only the Lord that could ever really fulfill or satisfy me because God has put eternity in the hearts of man. He's put a longing for him in our hearts. And so I feel like even if I would have had a sister growing up, just to go for full circle back to that, I do think I still would have felt a loneliness in my heart because the times where I feel most fulfilled is when I'm really making sure I fill my heart with the Lord.
For me, there's always different phases of life too, of what you could say was loneliness. And looking back to kind of go side by side with Trish, with back in high school, when I stopped playing sports, I started playing music. And so I had my sports friends, and then I stopped playing, but then I started playing music, so I had my bandmates. And then I was in another band right away after the first one broke up. And so like there was never like a loss of friendship there, even graduating high school. And then when I quit the second band, there was that point of like, now what? Like, yes, Trish and I were still together. We were dating and we had each other, but I moved back home. Most of my friends had moved away to college. I had quit the band I was in. I was just kind of on an island. And so until I joined another band, which was, it was like 2 years, that was a tough time. And yes, we got married in between there in that timeline, but it was tough where I was just like, Like I felt like I didn't have any friends. Then when I was in another band, then we had a kid. I wasn't in a band, started in another band right away. When I quit that one, it was kind of the same thing for a while where it was just like, it was lonely because I'd been with these people for so much and then all of a sudden not in each other's lives. And then I rejoined that band. And honestly, rejoining that band was great at the beginning. It's been great since I rejoined it. But now I've kind of quit it again. And maybe I'm a weirdo, but I don't feel that like loneliness. Maybe it's just an age thing too, a time in my life, but I don't feel that like, oh, I'm missing out because I'm not doing this anymore. I'm missing out because I don't see these guys anymore. You know, I shouldn't say anymore. I see them occasionally, but it's not the same by any means. And I haven't filled that void with a different group of friends by any means either. Maybe it's just an age thing. Maybe it's because our kids are older.
And I would say, yeah, that's true. Our kids are our friends, kind of. I mean, we're still their parents.
Well, but also, I mean, more involvement, I guess.
We have more sports. We're involved with our church. You know, we have different things that maybe aren't making, I don't know. I think of it as this like, making friends as an adult is so awkward. It is awkward. Yeah. And kind of one, like, you almost have to find common ground with people to become their friends. Like, they go to your church or your kids are in athletics together or whatever. And even then, it's super awkward.
Yeah. And I'm probably, my view of myself, our friends that we have, looking to me, it's like, I'm probably a terrible friend. Because I'm not going to be I'm not going to be the one that's going to be like, hey, you guys want to hang out? Or, hey, you want to go do this? I'm going to be the one that's going to just kind of like, Trish is going to be like, hey, should we do this? Or someone will ask us if we want to do something. And then
we have some really good friends that are good at that.
Sometimes I may have to, get, pulled out of my shell because I like to just be to myself. So it's like this topic is weird for me because I feel like I've gone in phases where I've really felt that loneliness because I was looking for something.
Right.
And maybe wasn't as grounded as I am.
Well, and I think there's something to be said about people who are comfortable being alone because I'm super comfortable being alone. Arguably, I am my favorite person to hang out with. I love hanging out with Thaddeus, but like, I really enjoy my alone time, and Thaddeus also really enjoys his alone time. I'm not necessarily talking about the being alone aspect because I'm all for that. I think every single healthy individual needs to be comfortable with themselves to be alone. And I know that's for some people so counterintuitive and very hard and very difficult because when they're alone, they have to struggle with their own demons and with their own issues and their insecurities and who they are and all the things they don't like about themselves. I know that because I've been that. But I think as I've evolved in my life and I've grown older and stronger in my faith, I've really enjoyed to be alone. But to me, being alone is very different than being lonely.
Well, and you can't learn to love others until you put your love in God first, and you can look at yourself and love yourself. And I'm not saying day in and day out you're not going to have something where you're not happy with yourself about something, but until you can truly be alone and be comfortable and not like torn apart, you can't always have a crutch there of friends or family there, because there's people that move across the country, move across around the world after they graduate high school or college or whatever, and they do just fine, right? And there's people that struggle, but there's also people that are too afraid to take a step, right? And to be able to like put your faith in God, that to not be afraid to go out and find something new and not have a crutch of a certain friendship or something like that. I'm probably taking this way off topic from what Trish has notes for.
No, you're fine. I think it's true. I think that I can think of specific times in my life where I felt so alone, but I had so many people around me gathering and being a part of my life. But yet is probably some of the times I felt the most alone because I felt like I was putting on a facade, or I felt like I couldn't be myself, or I felt like I couldn't fully love them and appreciate who they were because I wasn't fully loving and appreciating myself. And so I think that I fully agree with what you're saying is you have to learn to be comfortable with yourself and love yourself, so then from there you can love others. And then I think too, when we've been hurt and we've had our heart broken by people, that we can have the tendency to push other people away and build walls. And I'm very guilty of this. Ask some of my friends will say that about me, that it took them 10 years to become close to me because I had so many walls put up. And I'm not bragging about that. But what I'm saying is that because of hurt, I had that tendency to not want to let my guard down around my friends. And so I think that I was creating a life of loneliness rather than letting people in. And I just think it's so interesting because right now I'm actually without a cell phone, and I almost feel more whole than I did when I had a cell phone, because I think what happens is when we're on social media, or for me anyways, I know there's been so many times throughout my years of social media, like I said, I've had social media since I was in high school, where I've seen people post things about going out with friends that I'm also friends with, and I wasn't invited and I didn't know about it. And the hurt and the anguish that caused in my heart, it was almost worse than a physical pain. It was an emotional pain that I couldn't bear, knowing that I was rejected and I wasn't invited to go with this group where it might not have been anything intentional. They might have thought it was something I didn't like. I can think of an event that my friends had, that was a Halloween event that I wasn't invited to, and they just didn't invite me because they know I don't really like Halloween. So, but at the same time, it really hurt me that I wasn't invited. And so I think that social media has a tendency to polarize that in us. And I feel like right now when my cell phone is broken, I almost feel more whole because I'm just not seeing everybody's life, and I'm not missing out on texts or calls or anything like that, but I'm just present more. So not that I don't have a computer. I do have a computer, but it's just not at my fingertips. James talks about, James 4:8 says, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. And I know the times in my life where I felt lonely, so lonely, was the times that I really needed to look to God, and I should have been looking to God. And I don't know, maybe this is like a theology that's not accurate, but I almost feel like sometimes when my life has been so busy and consumed by people and what other people think of me and running from place to place and filling that void in my heart, that almost God has to strip that away so I can come back to him. And maybe that's messed up theology, but that's almost what it feels like in my life, that when I'm in those seasons of loneliness, it's almost God knocking at the door of my heart saying, let me in, and I'm here to fulfill your longing, and I'm here to meet you where you're at. I'd say this, like, if you're feeling lonely and you're not connected into a body of believers, you're not connected in at a church, that's, I think, a really good place to start. Get connected with God, yes, but look for those genuine relationships. Look for those people who you can have a common ground with. The Bible says something along the lines, Thaddeus, you might have the scripture about forsaking. We're not supposed to forsake the assembling together with others, or we're not supposed to be like those who don't assemble, but we are supposed to assemble together with other people who are believers.
Yeah, we talked about this before, and it's Hebrews 10:25. We all know there's so many different translations of the Bible, so I'll just pick one at random here. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. That's the New King James Version.
Right, so here's my theory or philosophy I have, that maybe we feel lonely because we need other believers. We need to be with something, a tribe, a community that's bigger than ourselves.
I think it's important, as we don't, that verse, at the end kind of talks about, some people interpret it as like the end times of like the day is coming, like the day of Jesus' return is coming. And we don't know when that's going to be. You're going to have some extremists that are going to say, oh, the end times are near because
We just live our lives
because of
with
the
that
election that just
anticipation.
happened or whatever, right? Anything. You hear it all the time. Or because COVID is going on, or, who knows, right? I don't know when the end times are, but as we live our lives, honestly, it could be like in regards to the end of our own personal lives. As you get older, the end is approaching, right?
Sure.
I mean, so don't shut others out just because we're getting older and maybe we're married and we have kids and we're busy, but try to embrace the others around us and come together and like we talked about when we talked about regathering as a church out of COVID, on how important it is to have those connections, to not belittle it and not just poo-poo it. Like it's important for that interaction with each other. It's important that we can come together and have a support system. It's important that we don't just rely on ourselves. We rely on God to point us in those right directions and to surround us with people that should surround ourselves with.
And here's the thing, guys. We don't obviously have any of this figured out because we know it's an issue. Loneliness is an issue, and I think it's a good issue because I think it pushes us towards community. It pushes us towards God. It puts a longing in us for deep connection with other people, with your spouse, with your friends. And so loneliness is okay. Just make sure you don't let your loneliness that you have in your heart make you even more lonely because you want to push other people away because you're scared of them rejecting you. Like I talked about my dream in the beginning. And in this political climate and with how things are, our loneliness and our opinions and the things that we value is just going to be more magnified. And so the differences you have with those people you love in your life to not separate you, but to draw you guys closer together and say, hey, you know what? We can still love each other, even though we have different values and different beliefs about this situation. So anyways, we're just going to wrap up because this got long. Just know we love you guys and we're praying for you. And if there's anything that we can be praying for you about specifically, or if there's a topic you would like us to talk about, please email us at
info@fallenshortpodcast.com. And if you are enjoying the podcast, please share it with your friends. Please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're using. Leave us a comment on our website if you happen to visit that, fallenshortpodcast.com. And until next week, I'm Thaddeus.
And I'm Trish, and we love you guys.